Hi everyone, I'm Yena. I'm having a great day. I hope you're having a great day too. Well, it is that time again. The BNR is upon us, coming next Monday. And as far as bans, I mean, there's really only one deck to talk about, Temur Breach. The deck that has probably the best win rate, although it hasn't been showing up for a while, probably due to a lot of issues with Moto. Fantastic showing in the vast majority of paper tournaments. Really turning out and putting out the results there. What makes this deck so good? Well, that's a little bit of a preview for later. Underworld Breach. To the shock of no one, the card is super powerful. 1 red, enchantment. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Underworld Breach. So the fact that this lets you just replay everything in your yard is amazing for that kind of deck. Specifically Breach. Being able to loop the either Moxen over and over again, use Grinding Station to keep adding fuel to the yard. Deck puts up crazy win numbers. I think conserve estimates put it at like a 57% win rate against the field. I think it really only has a bad match in Mill, which, I mean, not that big of a deal, I don't think. And here you can see Band and Pioneer, Band and Legacy. Modern is the last bastion as far as 60 card constructed formats go. I don't look for it to stick around. It does everything a deck like that wants, being able to dig to your other combo pieces, just refueling using like Mishra's Bauble and things. The card just does too much. It's seen some fair use in like Death Shadow style decks. Prowess was running it for a time there. Card is just a hair too pushed, in all honesty. Just a hair too pushed. So I think it's going to go. To my knowledge, from what I've been seeing at the very least, it is really the only card I think could go. With the new Ugin coming up, I guess you can make an argument that maybe something from Eldrazi should go. But it depends if we can get decks that can actually run underneath Eldrazi. Again, Breach just kind of had a very warping effect on the format with its crazy win percentage. So maybe if we just have decks that can, like aggro decks, combo decks like Storm and stuff, that can run underneath Eldrazi, maybe it'll be okay. We do have the new 7-mana Ugin coming out, giving every colorless spell in that deck the cast trigger, I'd like to add, to exile target non-land permanent that's 1 or more colors. That seems like it's going to be pretty oppressive. But, I mean, we still, I don't know. I personally am kind of against banning before something has hit, unless it's like obviously broken. Or if it's just like an auto-include in everything, see Lutri and Commander not too long ago. But as of right now, the only card I can really see leaving Modern is Breach, and it probably will wind up going. Breach is just a very problematic card. So, would not be surprised to see this out of the format pretty soon. That part, what is going to be banned, not really the most interesting part. What is more interesting is the unbans, I think. And there's, at least for me, there's 4 I really want to talk about. I do feel like, I'll start with my most controversial. I think these 4 are all pretty good. Now, there are cards on there, such as Blazing Shoal, that I think are completely fine coming off the ban list. They're not going to do anything. But I would also add, you could just kind of do those like in any old BNR. Like if the format's pretty healthy, you can just kind of dump that. Like there's no, I don't think there's many folks who are just out there, you're like just yearning with everything in them for a unban of Blazing Troll so they can put Parthenogenesis in their Infect deck, a deck that's already struggling in the format. So you can add a 2-card combo that might not even be that good because the card Orcish Bowmasters exist, as does the card Force of Negation. Like, a lot of issues with it. But I do think these other unbans, and specifically the 4 I picked, are going to be real interesting. So let's start with them. First on the list is Deathrite Shaman. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be very, very, very reticent about letting the 1-mana Planeswalker back into Modern, but I do have a few reasons why I do think it is fine. One, it is a great form of main deck graveyard hate that can probably pave the way for future unbans. I know that it is a little bit of a wishy-washy take as to why, but I do really think the ability to exile things from the yard is something you can't really discount. Now, I do know that's part of why it wound up there. The fact that it just did everything at 1 mana. But the format has also changed. Before, we really had Bolt to deal with it. You didn't really want to path this card. You know, you don't want to exchange their mana dork that's conditional on cards in the graveyard for just a basic. Like, you didn't really want to do that. So Bolt was really your only mainstay removal. Now we have Fatal Push. We have, even though it is at sorcery speed, I think we can count Prismatic Ending as a way to 1-for-1 deal with it. We have not only Bolt in red, but we also have Unholy Heat that, just a 2 toughness creature is not that big an ask. And of course, we would be very remiss if we didn't point out Fatal Push. So, I don't think killing a 2 toughness creature that's 1 mana is the biggest deal anymore. I mean, I feel like it dies to quite a bit. I do also get the point that it is very powerful with Agatha Soul Cauldron, a very powerful card. At the same time, though, considering how most Cauldron decks work, I'm not going to be very upset if they put a Deathrite Shaman under Cauldron. I'd much rather them do that as opposed to put a Yawgmoth, for example, under Cauldron, a Walking Ballista under Cauldron. You know, I mean, as someone who enjoys blue-black tempo decks, I would much rather see a turn 1 Deathrite Shaman than I would a turn 1 Delighted Halfling, because in the Yawg decks, I can just, if need be, I can ignore it. I'm going to keep my own yard fairly policed with Murktides, Frog activations, and the like. So when they go to exile a card from their yard to cast a Yawgmoth, I will be able to just Stern Scolding or counterspell the Yawgmoth. It won't have that uncounterable text. So I'm kind of fine. Now, again, it does give you a little bit more value with Cauldron, but the fact is, it is dependent on what's in the yard, and with all the Ketramos, Murktides running around in Modern, I don't know that that's going to be that impactful. I don't know that there's going to be stuff in your opponent's yard that you're going to want to grab. Still a ways, I understand that is a kind of reductive way to look at it, but again, I just think this former Terra, the format isn't there. Now, some have pointed out it is banned in Legacy. My counter argument to that is you can get it off a tropical island days as we go in Legacy, as well as Force of Will. The free stuff we have to protect Deathrite, not as impactful. Not as many decks are just going to be running cantrips to have them. Like, if you can run Brainstorm, generally you're going to in Legacy. That's not really the case in Modern. Even if we get to my second unbanned pick, our cantrip power just is not there in this format. So people aren't just running blue fair decks because you can find what you need. That's just not a thing that we have in this format. So because of that, that's why I do believe Deathrite Shaman would be a great unban. It would also add a lot of excitement. Now, I will say, like, the only caveat I will give on this card, and it is a big deal, I don't think it's the worst. We did just come off of the One Ring, but because much like the One Ring, it really stands to homogenize the format. Now, I mean, some decks, like, I don't think Eldrazi, like, yes, technically they could run it. I really don't see them being in the market for it. You know, why would you run this when you can just run Utopia Sprawls and do the same thing but infinitely better? Because Deathrite requires there to be a land in a graveyard. Utopia Sprawls just has to be on a forest and have the color that you need named. With most of these decks cutting down to just red-green, again, I don't see what Deathrite brings to the table for that kind of deck. Now, obviously, Yogg is going to want that. It's a great Cauldron target, if nothing else. I don't even know that. I could see they're definitely going to run some number, probably run 4, but then again, like, when you look at their Mana Dork suite, isn't Delighted Halfling kind of better, making those Cauldrons uncountable, making your namesake card Yawgmoth uncountable Grist on turn 2? It's a pretty great play. So, I think that Deathrite very much would have a home in those decks, but I don't know that it would be the be-all, end-all. I mean, optionality is good, but especially in a more combo-centric deck, sometimes you just need to make sure you're able to do what you want to do. So, I don't know. Like, I will say, you know, homogeneity of the format is a thing. I just don't think... I don't know. And we're also not seeing a lot of the Yogg or Omnath piles like we used to. So, I don't know. I could homogenize the format. That would be my one strike against it. But it also dies to literally almost every 1-mana removal spell. So, and it is graveyard reliant. You know, I don't know. I still think it's a fine unban, but I could definitely see the arguments, at least the homogeneity arguments against it, but I think it's fine. Now, to a card I think has a much better shot of it, and honestly, I think should, is Ponder. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put them back in any order. You may shuffle, draw a card. Great selection, getting to set up the top of your library. Sometimes you could just look 3 cards deep, crack a fetch land to shuffle away what you didn't want. You know, the next 2 cards you didn't want. If you just don't want any of them, you can just shuffle and draw a random card. It's a great cantrip, really powerful. Obviously, like a lot of cards on this list that started out in the early days of Modern getting banned, it was banned because of Storm. Storm and Titan are the decks that have done this. Literally, Amulet is just never on the chopping block. Anyway, I mean, I don't really see a reason for this to still be on there. Preordained has been fine. The current Storm decks are not in blue at all. Like, they have a little bit of green in them. Sometimes they will go Boros just for cards like Static Prison or Veil of Summer. Other than that, they're bringing answers in when they bring in a color besides red. They're not bringing in cantrips. We're not seeing any sort of Gift Storm style decks do really much anything. So because of that, I don't really see Ponder being a problem. We just do not have like a Doomsday style deck in Modern that would really abuse this. I guess you could argue that Mono Blue Belcher, and I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't mind having another cantrip, but that deck already has a ton of ways to find what it's looking for. So I don't think giving them a 1-mana, look at the top 3, put them back in any order and shuffle if they're all bad, you know, I don't think that's going to help. I don't think it's going to move the needle for that deck, so I think it would be a fine unban. I do think it would help your control decks and your tempo decks a lot, though. And I think that is fine. I think giving them that boost of power, I think it is a great card for that. So, in my opinion, let's go ahead. Let's bring it off of the ban list. On to my next one. This These next two are going to be cards that I think would be exciting to bring off. They would be very cool to bring off the ban list. But I also don't really look for them to do anything. I think that while these had to go at the time that they were banned, and actually Jitte never really got to see the light of day in Modern because it was a holdover as it was a standard ban card. I just started with Jitte. What is it? Well, it's a legendary artifact equipment for 2 mana. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, put 2 charge counters on Umezawa's Jitte. Remove a charge counter from Umezawa's Jitte. Choose 1. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. You gain 2 life. Equip 2. So it is an interesting card. It was very powerful back in its day. Putting it on something, attacking, generally meant that your opponent would never get creatures again. And you just kind of ran away with the game. Even in control matchups, just gaining 2 life or pumping the creature when that next time it got in by 4 was also big game. So it was very powerful. And it was so powerful because of how the old legendary rule worked. Control lists were playing Jitte just so they could bring it in to shatter their opponent's Jitte. But the legend rule doesn't work that way anymore. And I think Modern has just kind of moved beyond it. Again, before, what made it good was it was an artifact equipment. Those were very hard to deal with main deck. Now we have Beseiju. We have Prismatic Ending. We've just got a lot of main deck ways that decks just run because to kill an artifact, you know. Yeah, you get it off Stoneforge, but personally, like, if I don't get to deal with the Stoneforge they go to activate, I'm going to breathe a giant sigh of relief if I see a Jitte hitting the board across from me. Because I'll just wait till they go to equip it and then kill whatever creature. The card itself isn't that impressive. I think it will be a good unban. I think it's a very iconic card. A card that people will be interested to play with. But I'm going to put this in the camp of Splitter Twin. It should come off so it can go in the bulk bin after like 2 months. Fun card. Really, like, just a very iconic card. Not really there on power level. Modern's kind of left it in the dust long ago. Now, a card that I think it is a fine unban. Whether it will be impactful or wind up in the trade binder alongside your Jittes and your Splitter Twins, I don't know. Punishing Fire. Banned, ironically, because of Deathrite Shaman Jund back in the day. Same reason Bloodbraid wound up on the ban list. What is it? It is 1 red for an instant. Punishing Fire deals 2 damage to target creature or player. Now it's been irrad to any target to make sure it can hit walkers, which is fine. What really put this card over the edge was because a 2-mana shock not that great. Whenever an opponent gains life, you may pay 1 red. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. So you'd use Grove of the Burn Willows, your opponent would gain a life, and you'd put Punishing Fire back in your hand. I mean, it was a way to make sure that your opponent just never got to have small creatures on their board. And in that way, it was kind of oppressive. But again, like, if you just look at the sheer volume of removal we have these days, I don't know that Punishing Fire, like, yeah, it's kind of oppressive, like, that you get to pick it up all the time, but a lot of these small creature decks are kind of already prepared for that. We have Orcish Bowmasters, obviously. Now, that only works on 1 toughness, but the fact that it comes down and leaves 2 bodies behind to stonewall 2 creatures is pretty real. And the fact that whenever your opponent draws an additional card, it grows the token and deals another one, that's pretty good. Punching Fire doesn't really do that. We have a lot of ways to wipe the board right now. Toxic Deluge coming to Modern comes to mind. Now, again, that does hit multiple, but that is a mana more expensive, you know, a turn slower, which is not for nothing, and it is a symmetrical effect. Cost life at that. This one, I mean, like giving your opponent a life, not that big a deal, really. But I still think that, especially with Boros Energy being like one of the top decks right now, still, I think you could very easily justify this coming back. Like, also, don't forget, this does ask you to play Grove of the Burden Willows, a very mid land in your deck. And that is kind of a big ask. Like, that is, for this one card to work properly, if you go for the full play set, that's 8 spots you're chewing up in your deck. And Modern is a format where deck lists tend to be pretty tight on what they run. So I think it would be good. You know, it would help keep things like Boros in check. But I also think that, again, I don't know. To me, it reeks of the same issues that Twin ran into, what I think Gente will run into when I think it's a matter of if with Gente, not when. When it's unbanned, I feel like the format has left it behind. I just feel like the format where this was, where it necessitated a ban, is kind of long gone. I mean, and don't forget, because the biggest argument was the small creature decks, like your Elves, for example. Well, Elves is still nowhere to be seen in Modern. Elves struggles because of the card Lava Dart existing in the format. Not to mention all of the other good 1-mana removal spells, the repeated ways to remove creatures such as Ridden 6, the ways to remove creatures that come up the board like Bowmasters. There's just a lot pushing against the kind of decks that Punishing Fire already hated on. And I don't think bringing Fire back puts those decks in a much worse position than they're already in. Like, even with all of the love that Elves has been getting, it's still not able to get a foothold. Merfolk is fittingly barely staying afloat. And I don't see Punishing Fire changing that, especially like if you look at Merfolk, like one of their main pitch spells is Force of Negation, which exiles it, which hates out the part of what made Punishing Fire good and why you run, realistically, a very subpar land in Grove of the Burden Willows. So I don't see why this needs to still be on there. Again, just to kind of sum up this video now that we're pretty much at the logical conclusion, the only ban I see coming is Underworld Breach. I feel like that one, I would be very surprised if they did not ban it. Card is obviously very, very powerful, pretty much guaranteed to be too powerful. Has that, not as bad as like a KCI or a Nadu, but it has that same thing of it is a combo that once it gets going, it doesn't actually win for a good long while. So while we've not seen too much issue considering the amount it's been played, you know, we haven't had like a 45-minute turn out of Breach, but you know, it is one of those, it has that like just a very long drawn out win con, and it just has an incredibly high win rate. I think because of that, I would almost bet money that it's gone next BNR. I mean, that's really the only one I could see weaving. Now, going to what should be unbanned, again, Deathrite Shaman is one of my picks. I know some people are going to be worried about it, but again, we don't have Force of Will and Days to protect it. It like the graveyard with all of the Ketramos and Murktides running around, there's just not a lot of cards just sitting in graveyards anymore these days. So Deathrite losing a lot of power there. And even though I still think it would be run, I mean, I still think for certain decks like Yawgmoth, for example, making sure your Yawgmoths, your Soul Cauldrons, your Grist get through, Halfwing does that a million times better, making them uncounterable. I think Deathrite's a very good unban. Same vein, Ponder, really powerful. Really helps get you through your deck, try to find the cards that you need. And presuming Breach leaves, the other big combo deck of Storm doesn't really want blue, even with Preordain and Gifts Ungiven legal. It's usually going either just mono red, splashing green to get Veil of Summer, or splashing white to get Silence or slash Orum's Chant and Stag Prison. It's not in the market for blue. Because of that, I think Ponder, great unban. Although I will say, probably would skip that first RCQ back, because I do not want to imagine what a room filled with people who have never resolved Ponder before trying to resolve Ponder. Finally, the two that I just do not, I think should come off, I think it would be a lot of excitement, wouldn't really do anything, but I think it'd be a lot of excitement, are Umezawa's Jitte and Punishing Fire. Punishing Fire might actually do something. Maybe. I kind of don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. I would love for it to be unbanned and it actually be a player. I don't think it's going to... I cannot foresee a world where this card is at all oppressive. But if it came back and was a player, really police the energy decks and the like, I think that would be fantastic. On the other hand, Jitte, I think it should come off. I think it is Sea Stoneforge, Bloodbraid, and Twin. I don't even think Jitte should have been on the ban list. I think it's just a holdover from his time as Standard, wrongfully imprisoned because of that. The card is neat, but we're not even really seeing it in Legacy anymore. A lot of lists are just running it because they can run as a one of. There's not any Stoneforge decks in Modern. Maybe the interest will help them find a good build, and it's just a one of. I mean, they can add to their 4 or 5 other one ofs. Maybe it'll be fine. I hope to be wrong on that. I hope that it isn't going to wind up just in the trade binders gathering dust, but legal, instead of where they are now, which is in the trade binders gathering dust, but not legal. I think even if we just move it over to the legal side, it'll be all the better. But hey, that's just what I think. Please let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you think that there's any reason to keep Breach? Do you think there's any reason that they might wait a BNR to ban Breach? What do you think about the unbans? Deathrite too good? Ponder too good? I mean, please let me know. I am very interested. But again, thank you so much for your time and have a great day.